Assalamu alaikum dear viewers. I am Tayyib Ali. Welcome to my channel Chess Essentials. Our today's video is about basic endgame. In chess there are three stages: opening, middle game and endgame. Endgame is a very critical stage in chess, but unfortunately many players have very little knowledge about this subject. So in this video I will taught you some very basic endgame patterns which every chess player needs to know. So in the endgame, many pieces are exchanged off from the board, and the kings come out from their safety zone to promote the pawns, and the aim of the king becomes queening a pawn. So, the fight between the two kings to determine which one is stronger is called the opposition. Let's move to our first diagram. This is our first diagram. You can see in this diagram there are two kings which are standing in front of each other, and no one is able to cross other king to reach to the other side of the board. In this particular situation, which king has the move is in disadvantage, because the king whoever has the move will lose the control from one of the three critical squares in front of the king. As you know, there are three critical squares in front of the king. So in this situation, if it is black to move, then black will lose control from one of the three critical squares in front of him. And if it is white to move, then white will lose control from one of the three critical squares in front of him. So let's see, if it is white to move, then white move wherever white move, he will lose control from one of the three critical squares in front of the king. So black king will get the control of b4 square and will get the opposition, because the king which gets the control on one of the three critical squares will get the opposition, and opposition is the key tactic in chess. Which king has the opposition is considered to be stronger, because he is able to reach to his target square or target site, and enemy king can't stop the king which has the opposition. And if it is black to move, then black will lose the control of one of the critical square. As you can see, white gets the control of d4 square, and black king can't stop white from reaching to the other side of the board or reaching to the target square. So you can see that the purpose of opposition is that which king has the opposition is considered to be stronger, and this king which has the opposition is able to reach to his target, and the enemy king can't stop the king from reaching his target. Let's see another diagram. Let's move to our second diagram. This is our second diagram. In this diagram, the two kings are standing very far away from each other. In this condition, we should count the number of squares between the two kings. Here there are 6 number of squares between the two kings, and if there are even number of squares between the two kings, then the king whoever has the move will get the opposition. In this particular situation, if it is black to move, then black will get the opposition, and if it is white to move, then white will get the opposition. So suppose it is black to move, black king moves to the d7, white king moves to the d2, black king moves to the d6, white king moves to the d3, black king moves to the d5, and now it is white to move, and wherever white move, white king lose the control from one of the three critical squares in front of him, and black king will reach to his target, and white king can't stop black king from reaching his target and other side of the board. So this is the condition in which two kings are standing at a very distant, and the number of squares between the two kings are even. So whoever king has the move will get the opposition. Let's suppose if the number of squares between the two kings are odd, if there are odd number of squares between the two kings, so in this condition whoever king has the move will lose the opposition. In this condition, if it is white to move, then white will lose the opposition, and if it is black to move, then black will lose the opposition. Suppose it is black to move, then black king moves to the d6, white king moves to the d2, black king moves to the d5, white king moves to the d3, and now it is black to move. The two kings are standing in front of each other, and it is black to move. Wherever black moves, the white king gets control from one of the three critical squares in front of him, and black king can't stop white king from reaching to his target or reaching to the other side of the board. So you can see that if there are odd number of squares, the king which has the move will lose the opposition. Let's move to our next diagram. This is our next diagram. In this diagram, the two kings are standing at corners, and the number of squares between the two kings are 6. Same rule applies here. If the even number of squares between the two kings, then the king which has the move will get the opposition, and the king. And if there are odd number of squares between the two kings, in this diagram there are 5 number of squares between the two kings. So in this condition, the king which has the move will lose the opposition. So I taught you two rules. If the number of squares between the two kings are even, the king which has the move will get the opposition, and if there are odd number of squares between the two kings, the king which has the move will lose the opposition. So so now we will move to our next diagram, and this is our next diagram. In this diagram, it is white to move, and white can move only one square where he get the opposition, and this square is b2. In this situation, white king will get the opposition, because white king moves to the b2 and form connection points from b2 to the b8, and from b8 to the f8, and from f8 to the f2, and from f2 to the b2. So white king moves and form a rectangle, and all the corners of the rectangle have same color, have same squares. You can see all the corners of the rectangle have black squares. All the 4 corners of the rectangle have the black squares. So in this condition, white king will get the opposition. Now it is black to move. Wherever black king moves, the white king will get the opposition. So let's move to our next diagram. In this diagram, it is white to move and to get the opposition. White can have only one move in this situation where he gets the opposition, and this move is king to the g1. Here white king gets the opposition because white king forms a rectangle here, and all the 4 corners of the rectangle have black squares. So white king will get the opposition. Now if black king moves to the b5, then white king should move to the f1, because on f1 white king again forms a rectangle, and now the corners of this rectangle have white squares. All the 4 corners of the rectangle have white squares, and white will get the opposition. Which king form the rectangle will get the opposition, but you should consider that all the corners of the rectangle should have same color. And now if it is now you can see there is black to move, and white king again moves to the e1 and again forms a rectangle. Black to move, and now you can see there are odd number of squares between the two kings, and the king whoever has the move will lose the opposition. It is black to move. Now black will lose the opposition, because white king gets the control on one of the 3 critical squares in front of the king, and black king can't prevent white king from reaching to his target square or target site. These are the diagrams of opposition. Hopefully you will get the understanding about what is opposition and what is the purpose of opposition. Now we will move to our next topic, which is outflanking. Chapter 1 of the basic endgame contain 2 topics. One is opposition and second one is outflanking. Outflanking is a process in which one king has to reach to a specific target square, and he will move to his target square, and upon doing this he can also sacrifice the opposition. In this diagram there are 2 kings which are standing on the a1 and a8, and it is white to move and white king, and the goal of white king is reach to these 2 squares, which are f8 and h8. Now it is white to move, and white should have to reach to these 2 squares which are f8 and h8. The only way white king can get to these 2 squares is by first taking the direct opposition. White king moves to the a2 and takes the direct opposition, because here white king forms a rectangle. And all the 4 squares of the rectangle has the same color, has the white color. So white king will get the opposition. Now it is black to move. Black king moves and white king moves. As you can see, white king tries to get opposition from the black king until both the kings reach to the other side of the board. As you can see, both the kings move to the other side of the board, and black king moves to the h8, and now the process of outflanking starts. Outflanking starts because here white can move to the f3 and sacrifice the opposition. Now black king can take the opposition by moving the king to the h7. Because black king moves to a square where he can form a rectangle, and all the squares and all the four corners of the rectangle have the same color. As you can see, all the four corners of the rectangle have the white color, and black king form the rectangle. So opposition is in the hands of black king, but white king ignore this and move forward king to the f4. Now if again a black king tries to get the opposition, he will move to the h6, but now he can't stop white king from reaching to his target squares. And as you can see, white king reaches to the h8 square, because the target of white king is reached to one of the two squares. One is f8 and other is h8, and white king successfully reaches to the his target square, which is h8, uh, because he outflanked the black king here. Here white king sacrificed the opposition and outflanked the black king. When there is a file between the two kings, then one king which has the move, then one king can sacrifice the opposition in reach to his target goal, because opposition is not the end. If you don't reach to your target square, then what you will do with your opposition? You can sacrifice your opposition to reach to the target square. Here if black king declines to take the opposition and moves to the g8 square, then white king moves to the g3 square, and gets the opposition. Here opposition is in the hands of white king, and wherever black king moves, white king sacrifice the opposition. Wherever black king moves, white king moves forward in forward direction. So you can see white king reaches to the h4. Here white king again gets the opposition by moving to the square g4. Here it is black to move, and wherever black move, wherever black move, he can't stop white king from reaching to his target square. As you can see, white king successfully reaches to his target square, which is f8. So opposition is a process in which one king moves in forward direction, as well as he has the opportunity to take the opposition back, and other king can't stop the king from reaching to his target squares. So outflanking is a very important process, and every player should have the knowledge of this. So I will end my video on this topic. In the next video we will study the next chapter, which is king and pawn endgame.